Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Let me start with a confession. For most of my life, I believed that God was disappointed in me. I imagined a celestial scorekeeper in the sky, arms crossed, frowning at every wrong turn. Every whispered doubt, every moment I chose my own path over the straight and narrow. I thought God's message was clear. Be good, try harder, measure up, and maybe, just maybe, I won't punish you. And I suspect many of you here today have lived under that same heavy sky. You've been told that God is a judge, a CEO of the universe, a cosmic parent who loves you conditionally. You've been taught that faith is a checklist. Pray enough, give enough, forgive enough. And then after a lifetime of exhausting effort, you might just be welcomed into the VIP lounge of eternity. But what if I told you that you've been misunderstanding God's message your whole life? What if the very foundation of what you were taught about God is not only incomplete, but backwards? What if the good news is actually good? Let's go back to the beginning. Not the Genesis beginning, but the beginning of your own spiritual education. Chances are the first image of God you received was of a powerful monarch, a king on a throne, surrounded by angels singing holy, 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 and kings, as you know, make rules. They enforce borders. They demand loyalty. So naturally, we concluded that God's primary language is law. And if God's primary language is law, then our primary role is compliance. But here's where the misunderstanding takes root. We began reading every sacred text through the lens of a courtroom. The flood, divine punishment. Sodom and Gomorrah, divine wrath. The book of Revelation, a divine horror movie. We cherry-picked verses about judgment and conveniently glossed over the verses where God describes himself as slow to anger, abounding in love, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. We turned a God who is love into a God who loves only when we are lovable. And the most tragic part, we started believing that this harsh, demanding God was the truth. So we became harsh and demanding with ourselves and with others. We built entire religious systems around fear. Fear of hell, fear of messing up, fear of asking the wrong question. We reduced the infinite, creative, breathing mystery of the universe to a divine prison warden. But let me tell you what I've come to see. Let me offer you a different reading of the same story. Because the moment I stopped reading the Bible as a rule book and started reading it as a love letter, everything shifted. Consider the parable of the prodigal son. For years, I heard that story as a moral lesson. Don't waste your inheritance. Don't run away from God. And if you do, come back with a prepared speech of repentance. But look closer. The father doesn't wait for the son to grovel. The father runs. In ancient Middle Eastern culture, an elder man running was scandalous. He would have to lift his robes, exposing his legs, an act of utter humiliation. But the father doesn't care. He runs. He embraces the son who smells of pigs and failure. He throws a party before the son finishes his apology. The father's message is not approve yourself. It's I missed you, you're alive. That is enough. That is God's message, not to clean up your act, but to come home. Or take the story of Jonah. We laugh at the man swallowed by a big fish, but we miss the radical point. God sends Jonah to Nineveh, the capital of a brutal empire, the enemy of God's people. Jonah doesn't want to go because he knows something about God. He says it outright in chapter 4. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Jonah is furious because God is too merciful. He wanted fire and brimstone. Instead, God repents of the destruction he planned. The message, God's heart is not vengeance. God's heart is redemption, even for your enemies. We have misunderstood this for millennia. We think God's goal is to punish evil, but God's goal is to heal evil. Punishment is a tool, not an identity. A surgeon cuts to heal, not to harm. And if we have 1,000 verses about God's anger, we have 10,000 about God's steadfast love. But we are trained to focus on the 1,000. Now let's address the elephant in the sanctuary. Hell, few topics have distorted God's message more than the doctrine of eternal conscious torment. We have imagined a God who creates billions of souls, knowing that most will end up in an unending torture chamber and then calls that a justice. But think about it. If a human parent did that, created children knowing they would burn forever, we would call them a monster. Yet we attribute that to God and call it holiness. Something is deeply wrong with that picture. What if hell is not a location God sends you to, but a description of the state of a soul that refuses love? What if the fire is not literal, but the burning shame and isolation of choosing self over others for eternity? What if God's message is that he will pursue you to the very gates of hell and beyond until every tear is wiped away? The early church father Origen believed that even the devil could be redeemed. He was later declared a heretic, but the question remains, do we want a God whose love loses or a God whose love is ultimately victorious? I'm not here to give you easy answers. I'm here to suggest that the question you should be asking is not, what must I do to be saved? But what kind of God do I truly believe in? Because your answer changes everything. See, the misunderstanding has done real damage. It has driven people away from faith. It has made atheists out of honest seekers who looked at the violent, angry God preached from some pulpits and said, if that's God, I want nothing to do with him. And you know what? They were right to reject that God. That God is an idol. That God is a projection of human fear and control dressed up in biblical language. The real God, the one Jesus called the Abba, Father, is not like that. Look at Jesus. If you want to see God's message clearly, stop looking at the book of Joshua. Stop looking at the prophet. No, look at Jesus. What did Jesus do? He touched lepers. He ate with tax collectors and prostitutes. He said, let the little children come to me. He said, oh, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do while being nailed to a cross. He didn't come to condemn the world, but to save it. That is God's message. That is the clearest window into the divine heart. And yet we have turned Jesus into a bouncer at heaven's door. We have made his death a payment to an angry father who couldn't forgive without blood. We call it a penal substitutionary atonement. But what if the cross wasn't about satisfying God's wrath? What if the cross was God absorbing human wrath, showing us the lengths he will go to say, I love you, I forgive you. There's nothing you can do to make me stop loving you. What if the resurrection wasn't a legal verdict of a not guilty, but a cosmic declaration that love is stronger than death, evil, and every power that tries to separate us from God? If that is true, and I believe it is, then your entire life changes. You stop performing for God and start resting in God. You stop fearing mistakes and start making amends out of gratitude, not guilt. You stop judging others because you realize that God's mercy is for them too, and you are not the gatekeeper. You stop seeing prayer as a transaction and start seeing it as a conversation with a parent who already knows what you need before you ask. And here is the most liberating part. You no longer have to earn your worth. Your worth is not your productivity, your purity, or your piety, Your worth is that you are a child of God. Full stop. The same God who spoke galaxies into existence knit you together in your mother's womb. That same God looks at you right now in your doubt, your failure, your secret shame, and says, you are my beloved. With you, I'm well pleased. Not that we'll be well pleased after you fix yourself. Now I'm mean. So what do we do with this misunderstood message? We start by unlearning. We go back to the scriptures and read them with new eyes, not searching for verses to prove God's anger, but looking for the relentless thread of grace that runs from Genesis to Revelation. We reject the image of a violent tribal deity and embrace the God revealed in Jesus, a God of radical hospitality, self-giving love, and scandalous forgiveness. And we start living as if it's true. We become people who extend the same grace we have received. We become less certain about who's in and who's out, and more certain about love. We stop using God as a weapon to control others and start using our faith as a towel to wash feet. Let me end with this. Imagine you have spent your whole life believing that your father hated you. You cowered every time he entered the room. You worked desperately to earn a nod of approval. And then one day you discovered the truth. He never hated you. He loved you wildly. He was waiting all along for you to stop running and let him hold you. That discovery would not be a small adjustment. It would be an earthquake. It would rewrite every memory, every fear, every habit. That is what I'm offering you today. The earthquake, the good news that is actually good. You've been misunderstanding God's message your whole life. It's not a list of demands. It's an invitation. It's not a threat. It's a promise. It's not a do better. It's I love you. Come home. The party has already started. And the only question left is, will you walk through the door?